Washington. 2 associates of the president's private lawyer, Rudolph W. Giuliani, who helped fund efforts to investigate one of President Trump's political rivals, were charged in a separate case with violating campaign finance laws, according to court documents. The two men, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, believed to be important witnesses in the House's impeachment inquiry of Mr. Trump, were arrested on campaign finance charges. The arrests and charges were first reported by the Wall Street Journal. Two other men, David Correa and Andriy Kukushkin, were also indicted. Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman aided Mr. Giuliani's efforts to gin up investigations in Ukraine into former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr. and his son Hunter Biden, among other potentially politically beneficial investigations for Mr. Trump. Mr. Parnas had been scheduled to participate in a deposition with House impeachment investigators on Capitol Hill on Thursday, and Mr. Fruman on Friday. Neither had been expected to show up voluntarily. House Democrats were preparing to issue subpoenas to force them to do so. Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman were arrested and were expected to appear in court in Northern Virginia on Thursday, according to a spokesman in the United States Attorney's Office in Manhattan. The indictment said Mr. Parnas and Mr. Kukushkin are Ukrainian-born Americans, while Mr. Fruman was born in Belarus and became an American citizen. Mr. Correa is American-born. Mr. Correa was arrested Thursday in California and Mr. Kukushkin is still at large, according to a law enforcement official who was not authorized to discuss the matter and spoke on condition of anonymity. Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman have acted as emissaries in Ukraine for Mr. Giuliani as he has sought to uncover information about, and encourage investigations into, Mr. Trump's rivals, including Mr. Biden. Mr. Parnas, who has known Mr. Giuliani for years, worked with Mr. Fruman to connect Mr. Giuliani to Ukrainian prosecutors who provided information to Mr. Giuliani, as the Times revealed in May. Mr. Parnas and Mr. Fruman are based in South Florida, and are executives of an energy company that donated $325,000 to a pro-Trump super PAC last year, prompting a Federal Election Commission complaint by a nonpartisan campaign finance watchdog accusing the men and the company of violating campaign finance laws. Last month, Mr. Giuliani sought to minimize the significance of the campaign finance inquiry into the two men. They had a campaign finance issue, he said in an interview late last month. I referred them to a campaign finance expert who pretty much resolved it. Their lawyer, John M. Dowd, who previously represented Mr. Trump against the special counsel's inquiry, did not immediately respond to a request for comment about the arrest. This is a developing story. Check back for updates. Nicholas Fondos and Kenneth P. Vogel contributed reporting.